COVID, man. Stop laughing. Serious matter.
Oh, let's keep talking about COVID.
Yeah, I know. We're all sick of it, but it was the topic of our last episode, and we got to review it for some feedback.
Yeah, we haven't been talking about this at all.
Oh no, definitely not. Plus, there's a lot of problems to be solved still. So I don't think we'll solve them, but we'll talk about a few things. And
we can talk
give
about
the smart people out there some ideas. So.
All right. Well, let's get at it. I think we're, a little bit more serious than our typical COVID discussion. So
yeah, well, yeah, you gotta have some fun too. I don't know. Let's talk about some highlights though from episode 3 with Andre. I guess first off, just thanks for all the listeners. That was awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the virtual thing, because I don't know if people would have known if they just listened on the podcast.
Yeah, probably not. But it worked out pretty well, I think, at least.
Yeah, I think it went really well. And also the YouTube did really well. So
yeah, that's cool.
If people haven't checked it out yet.
There was a smart guy we interviewed. His name is Andre Schutten, and he had some things to say. So check it out.
Plus, he had a really attractive headset on. So go check that out.
That's true. That's true. If you're in it for the visuals, that's it.
There you go.
All right, let's give the people some meat and potatoes here. So some highlights. I thought the conscientious objection point that Andre talked about. There was some room for that in certain bylaws, maybe not the Hamilton one in particular, but you could read it into it potentially.
Yeah.
But he made a really good point about not being dishonest with that conscientious objection. You don't want to be going into church lying.
Yeah, in light of the 9th commandment.
It can't just be some throwaway like, I'm sick of COVID and screw this. Like, let's just go to church and not wear masks.
Yeah.
Like you could take a principled stance.
Right.
But you can't just be cavalier about it.
Yeah, it was the difference between like having a real objection and then So that's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people. And I think like his first video, I think a lot of people really targeted him for that, which I think he cleared up pretty well. Yeah, with what he said. So I mean, he was really clear with everything he said. So it doesn't give us a whole lot of critique here. So
yeah, it was encouraging though. Like it was a lot more, I think, a nuanced conversation, and I hope people learn from it. I mean, I got some good feedback. I think you did too.
Yeah, for sure.
People enjoyed it, so that was awesome to hear.
Yeah, 100%. So the other what I took out, like it was near the end of the podcast, but he talked about his discussion with Ken Whiskey. I guess Ken came up with this analogy, and maybe analogies aren't perfect the way we talk about that in the podcast too. But he said, if you're in a bus careening off a road and the bus driver says, sit down, you're best off to do that, to listen. It's in your best interest to do that. But at some point, the bus is at the bottom of a cliff and you're sitting with, you're sitting with a bunch of people and maybe you're not heard. And at some point, the bus driver telling you to stay isn't a practical
you gotta get off.
Instruction. You have to leave. And so we related that back to COVID where at some point, maybe the government saying wear masks, socially distance, and then the implications that has in the church, at some point that reaches a breaking point. And then we have to, use our Christian freedom and say, look, we're being cooperative, but this is overreach, or this is, getting to a point where, this is affecting how we worship and things like that. So there wasn't really a way like we could solve that. And we've had 100 conversations about this. And
the trouble is there's really no hard line to draw. Like, okay, like what stat, like how many lives are you going to do this at? Like it's, when you're dealing with public policy, it's always a series of trade-offs, right? So on the one hand, you have obviously all the COVID patients and victims, and so the impact from that. But on the other side, I mean, we've seen loneliness is super on the rise. Yeah. A lot of mental health issues, which stems from partly the loneliness.
Yeah.
Like people are suffering from not being able to
get surgeries.
Surgeries too. That's huge.
The strain on I say maybe even the phantom strain on the healthcare system, because there hasn't been the strain that they were expecting,
which is good,
which is
really
great.
good.
But because they've been preparing for that wave, it's actually caused other things
to get bumped.
And then, that does have implications. And as people, it's way harder to put a finger on, because it's like, when does that become a problem? Like, it's hard to tell what health problems are a problem. You're not getting a transplant. Well, what problem does that have? So I guess we talked about it, and then we kind of like flushed that example of the bus a little further out. And we thought, like, so in the example of COVID, it's like, you're in this bus, the government says,
stay.
This is how you stay in your seat.
In the bus.
Right. And we said, okay, that makes sense.
We're on
Now,
board.
are we at the bottom of the cliff? First of all, maybe. Like,
Hard to say.
You'll bring out some stats in a minute, but like, if we're at the bottom of the cliff, at some point we have to get up and leave. And also, what if there was someone hurt in the bus? What if the bus was like smoldering and could burst into flames? Which is like the implication we discussed, and like that kind of brings in like, at some point this is damaging our society or damaging the way we worship in church, or it's damaging people's lives and loneliness and mental health and stuff like that. So at what point does that implication outweigh
COVID?
You know, the bus driver saying, "Hey, stay in your seat," right? It's like,
Yeah.
the government can say that, but are they weighing everything? And then as a church, do we have, a need? Is there, or is it our jurisdiction to say, okay, well, actually there's many lonely people in our community. We feel like we need to get them help.
Yeah. This is hindering our ability to care for our elderly people in the church.
I mean, it's not an answer, but and just like in the podcast, like Andre's, he's very hesitant to give any kind of definitive answer because it really is something that's very gray. It's like, is this overreach? Well,
it's really tough to say. Like we were researching for this episode, and I mean, it's a tricky topic, obviously, and I'm glad we've been able to, for the vast majority, have positive engagement on this topic.
Yep.
But just looking at some of the stats, like, okay, so Ontario, we've had 40,000 cases so far that have been documented, 36,300 have recovered, 2,700 people have died from COVID. Across Canada, it's 120,000 cases. When are we shooting this? August 11th today. 106 have recovered and 9,000 people approximately have died. Now, today, they just announced there's only been 33 new cases today.
Canada or Ontario?
No, Ontario.
Yeah.
So going back to Ontario. So the point being is, there has been for sure an impact, and there is a reason why we've been doing all these pandemic measures. However, the trend is going downward. Yeah. So, which is very encouraging, and that means the measures are having an impact, which is awesome. Yeah, because it would suck to do all this for no impact.
Yeah, and you can't discount what's been done either. So you on one hand you have to be skeptical, on the other hand you have to be very appreciative of everybody and the government saying, "Hey, we should wear masks," because it's clearly having an effect.
Yeah,
right. This isn't trending up still; it's trending down, and that's like maybe they got on it at the right time.
So this is a feedback episode, and I want to bring in two pieces of feedback we received that I thought were interesting. The one points out, the listener points out that, okay, so for churches, we got, first we couldn't go to church at all. And then we got the permission here in Ontario to get 30% capacity. We have to socially distance, but we could still go to church. You take turns, different wards, whatever. And we can hopefully, once a Sunday, you're still able to get to church and worship with some of the church. And then we went to phase 3, and we didn't get any increase in capacity, but we had additional regulation. Now you have to wear masks. Now, some people are like, "Oh, great, like we're on board, like this is safety." Other people balked at it and said like this is overreach, and that's obviously where this whole discussion stems from. But regardless of whether you think it's a good or bad thing or somewhere in between, like we went from step 2 to step 3, we gained nothing other than further regulation. Yeah. But the health trend for COVID has been going down stat wise.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, like the church is going to have to say like, look, like we've been playing the game here. We've been cooperating. We want to see everybody as healthy as possible. On the one hand, COVID patients. On the other hand, loneliness, mental health, other people needing surgeries. Like the government does have to make a decision here.
Right. And we've talked about, and we mostly talked about in the episode, it's if this is overreach, do we disobey? But that's not really the only discussion. And I think Andre touched on it a little bit, was like, you also can engage with your elected officials, municipally, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Provincially
and federally. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's risen to federal, but at least your municipal, leaders, because, they're the ones making this bylaw, and
mayors,
they're the ones,
councilors,
and
MPPs.
that is an impact that a church can have, right? If they decide, well, hey, look at like, we have been playing along here, and this is, it's had an effect, but we feel like, either masks or, raising the capacity requirement or something like that would be more in line with what we believe would be effective. We will also police at the door, and we could do all sorts of things, and coming to your leaders with a plan. And I think that's something that could really have an effect, especially if, churches in a community get together and then approach
Totally. You could really have a positive impact. Like if, for example, like the church is one of the most important social institutions. Like if you're looking at it from the government's point of view.
Yeah.
So if a church came or a group of churches came to the government and were like, look, like we're hoping to increase our worship capacity. We're thankful for all the efforts you've done on COVID to reduce this pandemic. We know there's a large problem with loneliness and mental health, especially among the elderly population.
Yeah.
We're wondering if there's room for us to help out. Maybe we can, I don't know, do this safely, but bring meals or organize socially distanced gatherings or something to get the seniors in the neighborhood together. Or like, I'm sure there's a number of different activities or things you could do to just boost morale and get people together and connect people.
Yeah, I think it's a lost opportunity if an organization like a non-denominational organization in the community, like say like the YMCA or something, would do that. Yeah. And that's somewhere where, the church could have been a leader. The church could have said, hey, like, we don't need to just disobey. There are other routes that, we could go and to approach your elected officials and be like, hey, how about this? Yep. Because they're not necessarily daily thinking about your church, but you are, especially as leaders in the church. So it's,
and one other piece of feedback I want to keep in mind too, like we have to consider the position the church's actions put Christian healthcare workers in, who are on the front lines in the hospitals, because they have to follow all the rules and regulations, whether they like it or not, so they can work and keep people safe there. So we have to, I think, I say we, but even just church leaders, whoever listening to this, have to be cognizant of the fact that whatever the church decides to do, like there's many people out there who works as nurses and as doctors and whatnot. So
yeah, and we had some really good feedback on that. Like I think we looked at it really strictly from a political standpoint, because that's where ARPA is and Andre is, and that's the realm they work in. And but I think there are many other ways to look at this. Like if you're looking at it from a relational viewpoint, or like, from a neighborly viewpoint in your church, how do you react to somebody who wants to wear a mask? How do you react to someone who doesn't want to wear a mask? How do you understand where they're coming from? Like, maybe you don't want to wear a mask because you honestly have a conscientious objection to this. You believe that, and he touched on this, you believe that it's a sinful thing to perpetuate, say, a lie that, maybe this isn't as big a deal as everyone's making it out to be. And you may have someone in your life where if you're wearing a mask, that is perpetuating fear to that person. And people don't think that personally. I don't think. I mean, I was definitely guilty of this, and there was some feedback that I was like, wow, okay, yeah, right. I should really think personally about this. When I see someone not wearing a mask, I should say, maybe their circumstance requires them or encourages them not to wear a mask. And then, you also have the other side, which I think is more common with like healthcare workers and stuff like that, as you said, where they are required to wear a mask. If they don't want to, if they don't want to get closer than 6 feet, there's a reason for that. They have to, they're being told in their work environment. And if they, say go against that because, maybe personally they don't really care.
Their job's at risk.
Well, or
the patient's
people's
at risk.
lives are at risk, right? Yeah. Right. So it's like, you don't want to step over that line. And then you also we have to be very conscious of that, but then also, very loving in the way that we deal with it.
It comes down to what Andre said at the end there. It's we all need to show some grace, show some love. And, whether you're pro-mask or anti-mask, if it's not really a binary per se, but, there's lots of positions in the middle there too. Yeah. Just show some grace and respect for everybody. And there's a lot of different room for opinion on the subject. So.
Yeah, 100%. So
I think,
I don't think we're going to solve anything. Just,
no, but I think the middle road is A, just starting with respect, and then B, engaging in productive conversation with your elected officials instead of either blindly following along or developing a negative attitude and saying like, to heck with this, like we don't. The government's just trying to take over the church or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think, having a negative view of anybody's view is like, this is such a gray area that if you think it's black and white, well, then we just may have to have another look at it, right? Yeah. It's just
with a bit of wisdom, the church can use this to be, I think, winsome in the community. And we're going to be talking, actually, we should mention this too, Ian Wildeboer. Yeah. Pastor Ian is going to be on the next episode. We'll be talking about the missional church. Yep. And who knows, maybe we'll get into it there too. But this is a fantastic opportunity for the church to engage the community and to help people who are suffering in this, once in a lifetime situation.
Right. And there's different contexts too, right? Like we touched on that a little bit, but a missional context is almost totally different than, a church where you're not expecting that, or your outreach isn't as obvious, maybe say. I don't know if there's people walking into all the churches in our denomination on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
But if your church is really, really targeting those people and leaving room in your church for those people and hoping that this is a time where you can help nurture the community or help these lonely people, come through, and then also see the gospel in their lives, during this time. Like there's definitely room for difference, even across like specific church communities, right?
There's lots of room.
Hopefully, I don't know how much we want to touch on in that episode, but we're hoping to talk about mission and Ian Willibor's context at Mercy, and then maybe his relation in also what he did at P&G, how that relates, and then maybe what he can teach us and what he can teach everybody on,
I'm
very excited about it. I'm very excited about it.
It's going to be very interesting.
I'm also very excited to stop talking about COVID.
Yeah, but, it's becoming a bit dry. So we hope, you guys will just engage in productive dialogue and, hit us up if you have more feedback and let us know what you think.
Yeah, and if this goes on a while, we might have this conversation again down the road, but hopefully
we'll see about that.
Hopefully,
so for now,
with God's grace, this will peter out, and hopefully we can get back to normal life.
Yeah. So apologies for kind of the drab studio we have here. If you're watching on video, it's a little bland, but
yeah, we're hoping to spruce it up a little bit.
Yeah, I heard there's a new podcast starting up. What's it called again? The Bauman sisters are doing Living Artfully. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to team up with them and see if we can get some good art going.
Yeah, we had a shout out and we had to cut it out because we introduced Ian too early. Our schedules didn't quite coincide, but Ian was also on Tyrannus Hall, which we were going to shout out. Yep. Tyrannus Hall's
very interesting
podcast.
Winston Bosch
and Bill Young are doing a missional type podcast. So great, lots of good YouTube views on that one. So also another one to check out.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think, also shout out photographer Tim in the studio today. Take some shots.
Yeah, if you're hearing little clicks in the background.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try cut them out, but we'll see.
Whatever. It's keeps it authentic, So if you see our Instagram getting upped,
if you're sick of our 2 thumbnail pictures that we snapped on our phone,
I'm out here looking like Bob the Tomato in this hot room, so if you can avoid that, that'd be good.
Start getting a bit more professional here.
Yeah, so
right on.
I think without that, we'll leave it there for the feedback episode. Thanks again, folks, for listening and all your support. It's been fantastic. Hope to keep having real conversations, and that's about it, I think.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right, catch you next time.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Real Talk. To send us your feedback, email us at reformedrealtalk@gmail.com, go to our website at realtalkpodcast.ca, or follow us on social media on Facebook or Instagram at Real Talk under the handle Reformed Real Talk if you're searching for us, and leave us your comments or questions there. We look forward to your feedback, as this is what helps us grow as a community and have real conversations. This show is produced by Lucas Hopefluer and Tyler Vanderwood. The music is provided by Calvin Hutton. And that's it for now, folks. Keep having real conversations. We hope you were informed and inspired by this episode. Till next time, bye-bye.